Hello, everybody. It's your old friend Zeke again. I'm all dressed up today because I'm going to be talking about the American Industrial Revolution. It's another revolution. What's that word revolution mean? It means change. That's what it means. Yes, it does. Now, during the time of the American Revolution, most of this country here was dependent on growing things, plants, not just plants, food. Yes, just food. We're not just growing flowers out there. We're growing corn and wheat and barley and whatever else you need. Plus things you don't need, like tobacco. Anyhow, in the 19th century, which would be what years? In the 1800s. That's right. So things started to change. Late 1700s, early 1800s, things started to change, and machines would come into view. Can you hear that behind me? That's a machine going. I'm right dab in the middle of all these machineries happening here. It's exciting times. Oh, yeah. Things are moving right along. And old Zeke is part of it. So I want to make you part of it too. So let's move on here. The effects that people would have on this new way of living was called the Industrial Revolution. Now, this didn't take place till the end of the 1700s, really into the 1800s in America. It had already happened in England. In England during the 1700s, they had already had their industrial revolution. They were already using machines. We weren't using them here, folks. No, we didn't have machines here. We're going to get them here. So, in the late 18th century, what years would that be? That's right, 1700s. Industrial revolution now was already happening in these here United States, and they were using hand tools. Hand tools now going to be replaced by factory machines. We were using hand tools, but now we're going to be using machines to make things. Well, we seem like we've always used machines. No, these are the only machines we ever had right here, right here. Now we're going to start pushing on buttons and gears and belts and things going here and there, and they're going to start making things a lot faster than just this here can. So the example would be this, and one of the biggest examples is clothes. Yes, sir. You know what these clothes are made out of? Cotton. This is made out of cotton. Yes, it is. Yep. Now, clothes used to be made always by hand, and you have to weave everything in and out. It just took so long to do it. Then they start coming up with these here machines that could weave it together a lot faster and make the cloth so we could make clothes out of the cloth. We didn't have to actually make the cloth anymore. We could just buy it. I'm not too good at making clothes, but I do know how to sew. Yes, I do. I sewed up some pants before, some shirts before, even made myself a pair of socks when I wear them. Yeah. Anyhow, the spinning jenny and the power loom are two machines that are going to be made. So I want you here to listen because I'm going to be throwing some names out to you that you might want to remember. Do you hear me now? Okay. First, before the Industrial Revolution was happening, all clothes were made at home. At home now. Usually, the woman of the household, which would be either your mother or your sisters. Once in a while, some of the guys took some of this on too, but they were making clothes at home. So you didn't have a whole closet full of clothes. You maybe had one or two of the same things, pants, shirts. One got dirty, you wore the other one, then you wore the other one, then you wore the other one. You tried not to wear it out too fast, and if you did, you just patched it up. You didn't throw it away. You didn't just give it away. You patched it up. You used it over again. Now, a man named James Hargreaves. Do you remember that name? James Hargreaves. He invented something called the spinning jenny. Spinning jenny in 1764. 1764. Let me look up a little facts about James Hargreaves as he made this. It spun many threads at one time. Instead of just one thread, it spun many threads at one time. Unlike the one that your mom had with the old spinning wheel, right? The old spinning wheel, that was one at a time. Imagine putting 10 of those spinning wheels together and everything is spinning at once. Another man named Richard Arkwright. Richard Arkwright, 1769 now. 1769, just a few years later, Richard Arkwright, he invented a further step on the spinning jenny. Now, if it's already invented, can you reinvent it? Yes, you can. You could make it even better. It's called reinventing the mousetrap. Whoops. My notes is blowing all over the place. It is windy out here today. Yes, it is. So Richard Arkwright took the spinning jenny one step farther and invented the water frame. He invented the water frame. Now listen here. Water frame is a water-powered device that held many more spindles and produced thread a lot faster. They're using their noggins up here. They're using water as a power source. Can't they just plug it into the wall? Folks, there was no electricity, not in your walls. No, not like today. You can't just plug something in. They use water to drive it. Water. You understand? Using water as a power source. Now, in 1786, we're moving right down the line. A man named Edward Cartwright developed a steam-powered loom for weaving cotton. Ooh, boy, these boys are smart. So they took water one step further, heated it up, made it into steam, and if put it under pressure, it moves things a lot faster. A lot faster. So you see how things are progressing? Once somebody gets an idea, somebody expounds on that idea and makes it even better. Is there anything you can think of that you could make a lot better? Just think about it for a minute. There's lots of things that can be invented still. Everything hasn't been invented yet. But you can even take something that you're already using today, make it work a lot better. Yes, you can. You can make a lots of money doing that. Old Zeke's got some ideas right here. I'm not going to share everything with you because if I do, you'll take my ideas, won't you? Yeah. Anyway, now let's go on just a little bit further. Talking about that here cotton and making clothes over in England, that's called the textile industry. Textile industry was big. Oh, it was real big. Matter of fact, they didn't want the rest of the world to find out about it. Ooh, that's good tea. It's a little nippy out here today. Now, if you worked in one of them there factories, you weren't allowed to leave England. Oh, no. No, no. You weren't allowed to leave England because they were afraid the word would get out. They had what they called a monopoly on the textile industry. Well, there was a young man. His name was Samuel Slater. Write this down. Samuel Slater. I'm going to tell you a little story about Samuel Slater. First of all, he was born in Derbyshire, England. Derbyshire, England, back in June 9th of 1768. Now, was our revolution taking place yet? I'm talking about the war revolution. Not yet. Not yet. He was the son of a farmer, and he went to work at an early age as an apprentice for the owner of a cotton mill. A cotton mill. Ring a bell? Talking about cotton. Where do you think they were getting cotton from? The US of A. We weren't the US of A yet. We weren't it yet. But they were still getting it from the colonies. Now, eventually, he rose to a position of being a boss, a superintendent, somebody that could tell other folks what to do and how to do it. He was a smart boy. Yes, he was a smart boy. He became very familiar with these machines in the mill. He knew exactly how to fix them when they got broke, and he knew exactly how they was working too. Now, guess who designed these machines? Richard Arkwright. That's the kind of machines they were using. Richard Arkwright. Because Richard Arkwright, he wasn't American, folks. Richard Arkwright was an Englishman. Yes, he was. He was an Englishman, and he was in England, and he was making machines for the English, not for anybody else. Well, in 1789, at 21 years old, Samuel Slater decided to come to the US of A. 1789, guess what? We were the United States of America since 1783. So for 6 years, we'd already been a country. He decided to come over here. They really didn't want him to. It wouldn't allow him to, and he did not let them know that he was coming. You could be thrown in jail. You could be put in prison. Oh, yes, you could. So he left his home, and he headed for the United States disguised as a farmer. Some say he was disguised as a woman. I don't know. He could have been. He's only 21 years old. But in any case, he was wearing a disguise. He got to America, and with him was the secret of the textile machines. Did he have plans on them? Nope. Did he have drawings? Did he have notes? Nope. You know what he had? His memories. He knew how to make one of these things, and he did. So, here's what Samuel Slater did. He went to a place in Massachusetts. I'm going to tell you exactly what the place was called. It was called Pawtucket, Massachusetts. Pawtucket. You ever been to Pawtucket? I ain't either. I don't know if I'll ever go there, but it's kind of fun to say. Pawtucket. In any case, he went to Pawtucket, and he went to a mill owned by a man named Moses Brown. Told Moses Brown, what would you say if I could double your mill? I don't have the money, said Mr. Brown. He said, but I can put machines in there that will make it a lot more efficient. Within a year, after Mr. Brown said okay, he recreated from his memory Richard Arkwright's water-powered loom. Yes, he did. He started making machines. The Pawtucket Mill now would have 72 spindles powered by falling water. You see, because they were by a water source, they had a big wheel, push that water to pull those gears to make everything work. It was the first factory, now write this down, it was the first factory in the United States. First factory in the United States to have this. By 1800, 7 more mills would start being built in New England. New England was the key, all built on waterways. They needed that water source. The Industrial Revolution, folks, had just come to America by a 21-year-old Englishman that snuck out of England and built the mills by memory. Now, you think he's built them for everybody? I don't know. I'm sure he had some kind of deal with Mr. Brown. But you know, once people start looking at things, this is how Americans work. Once they look at things, they figure they could probably make one. I've done it. You've probably done it. You see something, I can make that. And you do. And before you know it, you're making it even better than the one that you saw. You're making improvements. That's what all these inventors do. That's what they all do. We're all some type of inventor. So, Industrial Revolution, it's here. Now, the factory system that he built there in Pawtucket. It was actually Pawtucket, Rhode Island. Rhode Island. Pawtucket, Rhode Island. Oh, not little tiny state of Rhode Island. That's where this whole thing starts, and it moves into Massachusetts, and it moves into Connecticut. Eventually, all over the country. That's where it starts, right there. This factory system, they called it, had many workers working under one roof. Before, they were just working in what they called cottages, just cottage factories, which were like houses, where they would put one or two of these inside of a house. Got too big. Eventually, they were all working under one roof with the machines. That there's Samuel Slater. Now, many people left their farms and they moved to the city to work in the factories. They wanted the money the factories would pay instead of working on a farm. This change is not always for the better. Now, you listen to me here. There's lots of places to go in this here United States. There sure is. But before you start leaving, take a look around where you're at. I know where you're at. You might think, I want to leave this place as soon as possible. But it might hold some of the best jewels and opportunities of your life. Look at home first. Then you can look elsewhere. So when people were leaving the farms because they don't want to be farmers like their mommies and daddies, they moved into the cities. City life was not good back then. It might be better now. Not for old Zeke. I'm not a city boy. You might be a city girl, city boy, but not me. Anyway, New England factories were a good place to work if you wanted money. But where were you to live? Well, there was places around, and sometimes these here factories that got so much money, they start building their own, what we might call apartments. No indoor plumbing, folks. Oh no, no indoor plumbing. The whole family, if you had a family, would live in one tiny little room. And it was so dry of a building, if any of it caught on fire, everything would go up. Very dangerous. Very dangerous. You weren't getting paid a whole lot, so you had to come up with enough money to feed your family, even to feed yourself. So you might be working 12, 14 hours a day at a couple dollars a week. A week now, a week. Factories needed that water, so everything had to be by a water source. And these textiles would be the beginning of everything. So as people moved into the cities, they started to realize maybe the farm life wasn't too bad. Remember what Thomas Jefferson said about big cities down south? He didn't want them because they bring on disease, they bring on corruption, they bring on, well, what we call today pollution in the air, in the water, in the streets. It brings varmints out, rats. It was happening. But if they weren't getting enough people to move into the cities, they had people from the factories that would go out and recruit people. Okay? So let me tell you about one group of people they really, really wanted to have. Women, young women. Okay? Now, the men were pretty much running the factories and they became supervisors, but they needed the busy bee workers. And the busy bee workers were women. Now you might think, can't men be busy bee workers? Sure they can. Sure. But women, and I'm talking about women 13, 14, 15 years old. They weren't kids. It was women. And as they would go to these small towns and have a meeting in a town hall, and they tried to encourage these young women to come to the cities and letting their parents allow them to come, they had to offer certain things. And one thing they would offer was a safe place to stay. What we call them today, boarding houses. So maybe 5, 6, maybe even 7 young girls live in these boarding houses with a house mother that might be in her 20s, 30s, or older that would make sure the girls would go to work every day, get fed right, made sure they didn't stay out, didn't have any boys at the house. And on Sundays, when they were off, they could read poetry, they could be in the garden, they could plant flowers. Maybe they could have a young man come over. Maybe. And they'd also be getting paid. They'd be getting paid to work at that their factory. Well, what they didn't tell them was there was a lot of health risks at that factory, a lot of respiratory problems, because there wasn't fans moving all that dust around that comes from the cotton. All those cotton fibers getting sucked right in. They should have taken a little bit of advice and wore a mask. A mask? Who would wear a mask around all the time? That's what they needed. And it was loud, very loud. They needed to take some of that cotton and put it in their ears, which is exactly what they did. Otherwise, some of them went deaf. But these young girls also knew this. They would only be there for a short time, because sooner enough, they'd be looking for a husband. And they would get married, get out of the factory, and have a family. So, was it better than being on the farm? You know, there's only few and far to choose from on the farm. But once you go in the city, there's boys everywhere. And that there, folks, is the key that got them young ladies to move. Boys. Can't help it. It's just the way nature is. So, in 1813, now you listen here, a man named Francis Cabot, Cabot, Lowell, Francis Cabot Lowell, Lowell. I had to spell both them words because they're hard to say. He built a factory in eastern Massachusetts near the Concord River. The factory spun cotton into yarn and wove that cotton into cloth. They made cloth right there. Now, there's pictures that you can look up. So you look up some of these pictures on how the cotton comes in and all the different levels it takes, and then it goes out. That is what you call a complete factory from beginning to end. It comes in raw materials, comes out finished product. It was amazing what he was doing. He was making so much money that he could build these places for these young girls and guys to stay, to live in the towns. Now, one thing about his factory, he hired a lot of young women. A lot. Various reasons. Now, one reason is he knew he could depend on them. So, of course, they found somebody and got married. Some of them stayed after they got married. I'm not saying they all left. Now, when he hired these young women, they became known as the Lowell girls. The Lowell girls. They lived in company-owned boarding houses. Company-owned. So he was doing things the right way. He took care of his workers. But these girls worked sometimes 12 to 14 hours a day in deafening noise. Cotton in the ears, folks. Cotton in the ears. Now, the young women came to Lowell in spite of knowing that there would be a lot of noise there. And it was dark there. There wasn't a whole lot of windows going on. No, there wasn't. But They came for good wages, between $2 and $4 a week. $2 and $4 a week. Now the menfolk were making anywhere between $4 and $6 a week. Sometimes, if you were a supervisor, could have been up to $8 a week. Wow. What were you making on the farm? Room and board. That's about it. But you could sell product. You were taken care of. Girls usually worked there, like I said, till they got married, but some did stay afterwards. But there was a big turnover, you understand? Once they got married, they made some room in the boarding house. That's right. The men started complaining about some of the working conditions there. Some of the working conditions. And eventually, they would start something called a union. You ever hear what a union is? Get people together and you complain or you talk out things to the people that own the place, the administration. And they were telling Mr. Lowell, the working conditions here are pretty bad. We're working really long hours. Respiratory problems, coughing a lot, breathing all this stuff in. There's no circulation in the place. It's hot here or it's cold here. He had to start making some changes. Mr. Lowe did? He started making changes. Now, the women were not allowed to be in that union. Oh no, just the men. Just the men were. Seems kind of funny, doesn't it? Well, that's the way it was. The women would have to come up with their own union eventually. And they did. Now, what happens if the administration doesn't want to go along with any of your terms? Or gives you so much and doesn't give you so much? You have a right to go on strike. Well, back then, if you went on strike, you're probably going to lose your job. If maybe not your life if you try to get back in there. Today's not like that. There's all types of ways to negotiate with people. And you have to do something called compromise. Remember that word we used before? Compromise? That's right, compromise. Eventually, they would have to compromise with Mr. Lowell, and Lowell would have to compromise with the union. Nobody wanted the unions to start because that way you don't have control totally. But he allowed it. Yes, he did. He allowed it. And he prospered. He sure did. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this down right now at 28 minutes and give you part 2 later on, because there's more to come on this American Revolution. I'm trying to shut this down, and I'll talk to you later.